Hi everyone, it's Tammy with Shabby Fabrics. I have a really beautiful quilt today. This quilt is called Garden Moss. The fabrics are Elliot by Windham Fabrics. The pattern that we're going to be using today is actually a free download from Windham Fabrics, and it was designed by Wendy Shepherd. I love the size of this quilt. It's a very nice size. I can easily see this in my house. This would go right in. These are truly my colors. Do have a beautiful backing that coordinates with this quilt. I love this print. This is the backing fabric. So if you love this quilt, you're going to want to grab your kit and grab your backing. Let me talk about a few of the notions that I have on set here with me. Of course, rotary cutter and a fresh blade. We're going to be cutting some charm squares. This kit has 3 charm packs in it, plus all the yardage that you need to make the quilt. A seam ripper. Hopefully you're not going to see me use that today, but you never know. We all have those days. I have a blade saver. Blade savers are great for when you're chain piecing and then you need to just quickly cut your pieces apart. It's nice just to have your pieces in your hand and you're not fumbling with scissors. I'm using the Schmetz Microtext 8012 needles. You could also use the Schmetz top stitch needles in the 8012, but I recommend a size 8012 for piecing with cotton. I have the Carrera Aurifil thread set. This is such an amazing pack of thread. It's got a white, a black, and a silver. I'm going to be using the silver today. I love Aurifil thread. It's incredible to stitch with, but if you pick that up, you'll have everything you need for piecing for quite some time. The extra fine patchwork pins, those are probably my first love. I love the fineness of these pins. They don't disturb your seams when I'm using them, and they're very sharp. A magnetic pin cushion, I love that. So if I have pins laying around, I can just quickly pick them up and they all just line right back up again. And my little Karen K scissors. I have a couple of rulers on set with me today. I have a 3.5 by 6.5 creative grids. We're going to use that to do some trim work with. Of course, I always have a 2.5 by 24.5. I'm cutting yardage with that, cutting binding with that. Love this ruler. This is one of my favorite tools. It's very well used in my sewing room. The last thing I've got is my Creative Grids rotating spinning mat. I love the Creative Grids one. It's very easy to use. I do not have a problem with the base trying to rotate with the top of this. I love that. So let's get started and jump right into this project. All right, so as I mentioned, this is a free download from Windham. In your kit, you will already have a copy of the pattern. You're not going to need to go out and try to find that. We will provide that for you, a full color pattern. All right, so I'm just going to press one of these. Now, I've just cut 5-inch squares because I didn't want to open a charm pack just to do a video with just a few, because I really only need one to show you how to cut this. So let's just lay this on the board. Grab a rotary cutter. They have a very specific diagram on how to cut your squares here. So the first thing that I'm going to want to cut is I'm going to take a 1.5-inch strip off and I'm going to cut my longest piece, which is a 1.5 by 4.5-inch piece. All right, so I'm going to use the 1/2-inch side of my ruler, Creative Grids. I love these rulers. They have a 1/2-inch mark here. I'm going to use the black numbers for 1/2-inch, use the white numbers for whole inch. Today we're going to concentrate on the black numbers for 1/2-inch. This 1/2-inch is from the edge and it's got a really nice no slip texture on the back of it. So when I apply pressure to this ruler, I know it's not going anywhere. All right, so I'm going to take a 1.5-inch strip off of the side of my charm, just like that. All right, let's rotate this mat. Okay, so I need to cut this to 4.5. So I'm just going to use my ruler. Again, the bottom of the ruler's got my 1/2-inch mark. And I'm going to measure up to 4.5 and trim that piece off. All right, so there's my first piece. It's got kind of a long thread. There we go. There's my first piece. All right, now I have another piece here. Now I need a 1.5 by 3.5 off of this. So let's take a 1.5-inch this direction And this should be 3.5 inches. Let's check. Yep, it's perfect, right on. There's that. Now I need a 2.5 by 2.5. So I'm going to cut my 2.5 inch. I'm going to cut this to 2.5, rotate my mat, turn my ruler, and cut again for 2.5 inches. So I have a 2.5, a 3.5, and a 4.5 inch strip. So you're going to do that with all of your charms. All of your charm packs get cut to this, your colors. You need 100. You need 100 of these. So, because there are actually 100 blocks in this quilt. I know it's a really big number, right? You're thinking, wow, I didn't realize there were 100 blocks in this quilt. There really are, but they go together so quickly. This did not take me long to make. This quilt was easy. Let's make a block. Okay. So I have my 2.5 inch squares, what I'm going to start with. And I'm going to take my background pieces. Here they are. I've cut these ahead of time. All right, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a background piece onto here, right? Right here. So 1/4 inch and press. Let's do that. So I've done that ahead of time, right here. So I press towards my strip that I added. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is now I'm going to put a 3.5 on it. This is the tricky part. These can now get turned, and you need to pay attention to how this is laying. This actually goes on the side. This goes on what I'm going to call the bottom of the block. All right. It goes on this side. So now I'm going to stitch this. All right. And here's what that looks like. Just like that. See how it's on the bottom? Perfect. All right, so you can see how if you have all of your 2.5 inch squares, you're just going to start running these through and chain piecing these together. That's where this handy cutter, that blade saber, comes in, just to quickly clip all of these apart. And then you just start again. Just double check that you are putting that 3.5 on the correct side. All right, so then what I did was I just cut, these are background squares, so then I just cut some random pieces here, like this. So I want 2 that go together, like this. This is a 3.5. This is a 4.5. This is going to be my block, just like that, okay? Do not, and I did this, when you're making this, your brain immediately says, oh, I'm making a log cabin block, right? You go into that automatic pilot mode. And so then you start putting this on this side. It's like, wait a minute, something doesn't look right. Yep, that's wrong. It goes like this. Okay, this goes on to here, this goes to here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick here so that I can have a block made. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to assemble this. All right, so I will see you at the machine. All right, so let's press this. So I'm going to set my seam and flip this towards there, towards the strip I just added, just like that. Let's add the next one. And I'm just going to put a little pin right here at the bottom of this. I just want to hang on to the end. But you notice that I placed my pin well out of my seam allowance. That's so that I can start here and sew all the way down without having to remove a pin. I also do not sew over pins. All right, let's go do that. All right, let's press this out. Beautiful. Now you see how quick that block was, right? That was fairly quick. All right, so I'm going to clear this. I'm going to show you how I lay this out. This quilt is assembled on point. All right, let's move our little fabric scraps. I've got some blocks here. The other thing that I recommend is the Center Stage Design Wall by Gypsy Quilter. We do use these design walls upstairs in the sewing studio. We love these design walls. I don't know where we'd be without a design wall. This one, they come folded up in this bag. So when you get this and you open this up, you're going to want to take this to your ironing board with a pressing cloth, and you're going to want to press out all of the wrinkles so it's nice and flat. That way your blocks are going to stick to it easier, because if it has wrinkles, it creates these peaks and valleys in it, and your blocks don't make contact with the design wall. So by pressing it, it's nice and flat and smooth, and then your blocks will stick to it much easier, okay? So I would lay all of this out on a design wall, all right? So I'm just gonna start laying blocks out like this. I have 4. We have a setting block. These go in the middle, like this. Okay. Then I have setting triangles here. This is a little triangle. This one is going to go on the end. Setting triangles are going to go in like this. So now you can see the quilt is starting to take shape and starting to come together. There we go. Just like that, right? So I get this all laid out on my design wall. And then I played with my blocks, and I just started moving them all around, and I don't want this color next to this color is the same, and just play with them. Then I leave the room, and then I come back, and you look at it with fresh eyes, and you're gonna go, oh, I should have seen that. Those 2 colors are the same, or whatever. You'll see something else. It's crazy how that works. All right, so once I get this laid out the way I want it, let's now put it together. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with this first block up here. All right, and I'm going to sew this top piece, this end corner, to my block like this. All right, now I want to make sure that I'm sewing this to the center of my block. So let's fold the block in half. And actually, let's give that a light press and create. I'm actually going to press it, yep, just the once. Okay, so it looks like this is the center of my block right here. So now when I put this point on here of my triangle, this is where my crease is, down here at the bottom. That is exactly where I want that. So now I'm going to pin this on. I'm actually going to pin my seam allowances, because I can see it's folded this way, and so when I sew across this, these have a tendency to flip. I'm going to pin that seam allowance because I want him to stay that way. I'm going to be the boss of my seam allowances today. All right, and then I'm going to put another pin at the very end of this block like that. All right, so it's going to hold this point right there. I don't want him to start traveling on me. And I'm going to start 1/4 inch all the way down. Here we go. All right, so let's take out our pins and press this towards the triangle. Just like that. All right. And put it back where it goes. That's important too. Set something back. I don't try and do all the rows on this and then try to reassemble them on the wall. I'll do a row, put it back on the wall. Make sure that you have the blocks in the right order, or that you have not turned a block upside down. All right, now I'm just going to add these 2 side triangles, one here and one here, just like this. All right, and I can see already this is going to be perfect. I'm going to go ahead and pin this. Again, I'm going to pin those seam allowances because I want them to stay the way they are. But I can see, I'm going to put this on the mat so you can see it better. Right here, I have a 1/4 inch right here. So I know that I'm starting right here in that point. Now this long point right here, if that bothers you or it gets in your way, because this hides my seam allowance, right? I can't see the mark on my machine because of that. You can trim that off. Just take a pair of scissors or your rotary cutter if you're brave. I'm not brave. I use a pair of scissors. I'm not that brave. Okay, I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and just nip that corner off, just like that. Let's go ahead and nip this one because I already know what's coming. Let's just nip those off of there. Now I have a clean edge and I can easily stitch that. All right, I'm actually going to put one more pin in this right here. Okay, and you know, as long as I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and pin the other side of this. So I can sew them both at the same time. Let's pin those seam allowances and pin this corner up here. There we go. All right, I'll see you at the machine. Okay, let's take our pins out and press. Now I'm going to press these towards the triangles. I don't like pushing back on patchwork unless I absolutely have to. So I'm going to go ahead and push this all towards the triangle that I just added, just like this. All right, now we have our corner done. Beautiful. That is my end corner right there. Oh, I just have pins all over the place here. Here we go. All right, there's my corner. So I made a couple of rows ahead of time. I'm going to go in here like this. And then there's my next row, like that. Perfect. So I have pressed, all of these are going towards here. These are going out. These are going out. These are coming back in, right? So you're always pressing towards your pieces that do not have patchwork, all right? So now when I go to nest this together, these automatically nest. Just, they're right there. We can pin this seam here, pin this one, and you can see out here, I'm going to go ahead and clip this corner. I think I left my scissors at my sewing machine, so I'm going to have to be brave and use a rotary cutter on that. Very carefully use a rotary cutter on your block. There we go. And pin these in, no problem. All right, so you can see how quickly this quilt will go together. Sew this seam, and then press, and then just continue adding your rows together. All right, that's how you make a garden moss block. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've picked up some tips on chain piecing, on sewing accurately. Make sure your 1/4 inch seams are correct, and you will have this quilt put together in no time. I will see you next time on a Shabby Fabrics tutorial.